Hello, I'm Reverend Kenny Callahan, the pastor at Metropolitan Community Church of Richmond. Last Sunday, we had a snow day in Richmond and nobody could get to church because it was not safe to drive. So this Sunday, we're going to repeat the sacred text from last Sunday. And the sacred text is from John's story, the second chapter, verses 1 to 11. The story of Jesus turning water into wine at the wedding in Cana. The last couple of weeks, I've been thinking a lot about grace and how the abundance of God's gifts work in our lives. In Sunday's sacred text, John reminds us that grace isn't only about making up for something that we lack in our lives. Grace is providing more than we'd ever imagine. Grace is about God's unbelievable, more than we could possibly imagine, abundance in action in our lives. Jesus turns the water into wine as an illustration of God's abundance and grace in action. Jesus went way beyond expectations to provide more and better wine than the wedding party could have ever expected or anticipate. Why? Because that's how God works in our lives. And that is what grace looks like. According to John, grace is an overflowing of joy, of blessings, and of the presence of God. It's the realization of the abundance of God's love and God's blessing. Sometimes being aware of God's presence and love active in our lives is simply doing the best that we can to be aware of and to pay attention to the extraordinary and everyday experiences of life, and also mustering up enough faith to believe that God is with us in abundance, never ever in scarcity or in fear. God desires for us to realize the abundance of love and grace given to us every minute of every day, regardless if we believe it or not. It's always there. It's my experience that God often shows up in a smile, a kind word shared, a gentle or a positive gesture, in a heartwarming story, or in the act of caring for or helping someone else, especially if we're having a tough day. Or also, God shows up in our working for justice and compassion for those living on the margins of our society and our world. All of these things are beautiful images of God in action. And the longer I live, the more I realize that in God, the possibilities are endless. And this in itself is another sign of abundance. And we could all use a little more grace and abundance in our lives. Today is the perfect chance to claim that grace and abundance in our lives and to share it with someone else.